So a candidate in South Carolina today, Robert Kennedy Jr., is taking on President Biden for the Democratic nomination.
While Kennedy may be a long shot, he says his popularity is growing. Our Justin Daugherty sat down with the candidate in Charleston.
Robert Kennedy Jr. has faced a number of labels: anti-vaxxer, anti-Semite, and conspiracy theorist. But now he is a Democratic presidential candidate, and we sat down with him exclusively here in Charleston at the memorial for the naval base where his uncle once served. You carry the Kennedy name with you. Everywhere you go, you are now running for president. I think my biggest question would be why and why now? And especially in the face of all the criticism that you faced. So often you look up your name and it says conspiracy theorist right before your name. Your own family has criticized you. A family member recently said your presidential run is a vanity project. So why run, and why run now?
Yeah, and by the way, my uncle served here briefly in 1942, and he was in this is John F. Kennedy, he was in the Office of Naval Intelligence, which was the predecessor to the OSS. I'm running for president because I want my children to grow up with the same pride in our country that I did. I grew up thinking with a very, very good reason that this country was the greatest country in history, that we were an exemplary nation, that we were the template, the model for democracy around the globe.
In regards to the files in your uncle's assassination, President John F. Kennedy, we know that not all the files have been released. If you become president, will you release all the files?
We have a law in this country, the JFK assassination documents law, that says that all those documents legally have to be released to the public. Why are they withholding 5,000 documents illegally 60 years after my uncle's death? You know, all the people who were involved in that murder are now dead. So who are they protecting? And clearly, you know, there's institutional anxieties about releasing that law, but the American people are entitled to them. It's an important thing for us to understand what happened. It was a coup d'etat against American democracy. President Trump promised that when he became president, he was going to release them, because it's his legal obligation to do so. President Biden promised that he would. Both of those presidents broke their word to the American people.
How do you think you'd be able to release them when we have a Republican president unable to, and a Democratic president?
The president can release them. Both of those men decided not to. But that is not going to happen with me.
Something else I wanted to ask real briefly, the accusations of your anti-Semitic comments. After you were heard saying those, you went on Capitol Hill. Under oath, you said you had never said anything anti-Semitic in your life. You then said you were a dedicated defender of Israel, even more so than President Biden. Then you went to New York. You sat down with some Jewish leaders in New York. Then you visited the grave of a prominent rabbi. So you've done a lot to say that those...
And by the way, the meetings that I had with Rabbi Shmuley in New York, and the meeting, my visit with Dov Hivkin, who was, you know, when the visit to Rabbi Shearson's grave, when my father all visited him when he was alive, those were arranged prior to, you know, these allegations. People knew that I was going to do those visits prior to making these false accusations that I had made anti-Semitic statements. I've never made an anti-Semitic statement in my life, and my program on Israel is much better than any of the Democrats. I'm the only Democrat who has condemned the transfer of $2.5 billion to Iran when Iran is building nuclear weapons.
And I know...
you know, but listen, I am right now a threat to the DNC and to President Biden. And for a long time, the policy of the White House was to ignore me, hoping that I would go away.
On your website, you said you want to remove qualified immunity and transform the police. What does that look like for you to transform the police?
Yeah, I don't, if it says on my website that we're going to remove qualified immunity, that's wrong.
On your website it says transform the police. In an interview, you said you wanted to remove...
Yeah, I don't, that is an error. We do not I do not want to. I don't think it's feasible to remove qualified immunity.
Okay.
I think the police are having a hard enough time hiring people right now, and that a lot of interactions that the police have nothing to do with civil rights or race, and we can't put each individual police officers in a position where anybody who has an interaction with them can then sue them individually. And
so you don't have any plans in place to remove qualified immunity?
No, I'm not going to remove qualified immunity, but I'm going to use the Justice Department to address any abuse of the use, particularly of deadly force, in interactions between Black Americans and police or anybody else. So, and I think that that's a civil rights issue that has to be addressed, and I'm going to address it aggressively.
Another major issue, especially here for South Carolina. We have talked to sheriffs, we have talked to law enforcement, and they said the vast majority of the fentanyl coming to South Carolina is coming from the southern border. What will you do to address the crisis at the border, especially the influx of drugs coming through?
It's not just drugs, it's human beings that are coming through. And that needs to be stopped. In the last 3 years, and I've been down to the border, I went to the border at Yuma between 2 o'clock and 4 o'clock a.m., and I watched 300 people walk across the border, and all of those people are now going to be given plane tickets paid for by U.S. taxpayer to any destination they want in the United States. What I saw there was insane. It took me 3 days of watching this to really comprehend how crazy our border policy is. Our border policy, which has created a humanitarian crisis. The people are coming across, they're being brutalized, they're being extorted, they're being exploited, they're being, in many cases, raped and beaten by the cartels. But our borders are being run by the Mexican drug cartels. And they have brought 7 million people over the last 3 years illegally. We are the legal immigration, the people who get in line, go through the process. Over that same period, it's been only 3 million. So, and that is an important process. There's no nation that can continue to function as a nation if it has completely open borders. We need to close our borders completely, and I'm going to do that as president. The good news is we spent a lot of time working with...
When you say close them completely?
Close the illegal entries completely. We need...
Finish the wall?
In some places, in certain places where I watched it, where the wall was incompleted in high-density populated areas, it definitely needs to be completed.
Now, because the African-American vote played such a crucial role for President Joe Biden to get the nomination in 2020, we asked RFK Jr. what his plans were when it came to appealing to Black voters. And he said that the COVID lockdown disproportionately hit poor communities hardest, and he plans to make up for that in his administration. In Charleston, Justin Dory, Fox Caroline News.